Um, well, my connection with the club goes back a long time. My great grandfather, George Crosby, was chairman here from 1906 to 1916. However, I have it on authority that he never played tennis and actually had no interest in tennis, but rather treated the place as a gentleman's club, where he spent most of his time in the bar or in the snooker room. My other great grandfather, Freddie Lyons, was a member in the club at the same time, and both he and his wife Florence are in one of the very old photographs of people who took part in the tennis tournaments here. It's quite possible that my grandfather and my grandmother would have met here. And my grandmother was a very keen sportswoman, and there is a picture of her in the club playing in the 1933 ladies doubles finals with her sister, Anita. Now, in 1933, she already had 3 children. So she assured me that it was quite unusual that women with children would be playing tennis, never mind being in a final. She also mentioned that playing on the top court, which she did in the final, was her first time playing on the courts in front of the building. Women played down on the lower courts, where I imagine they couldn't be seen from the bar. Also, when the match was finished, her gin and tonic would have been brought down to her to Michael's house by her husband. But she continued to play tennis for a long, long time. And my mother remembers coming up to tournaments here when she was quite a small girl and being told to sit quietly and don't make noise. I joined the club here in 1986 and played on a very regular basis since then. Of course, I joined as a lady associate member, as most of us ladies were. In 1997, I was asked to become captain, which was a very scary thing in a way for me because we had never had a lady captain before. And I can tell you that my first committee meeting was pretty traumatic. I was the only lady sitting at a table of 13 or 14 men. However, I have to say that the trustees at the time, who would have been Tom Murray, Spike O'Sullivan, and the great Gordon Exshaw, really made me feel welcome and made sure that I always sat beside one of them. Of course, to become captain of the club, I had to be a full member. So I then had to change from associate membership to full membership. So it cost me money to become captain of the club, but of course I was delighted to do it. In those days, we didn't have the same support from the office. It's not that the office wasn't there, but we didn't have the technological support that we have today. And every tournament was organised by hand. Schedules were written out by hand, and any problems were dealt with by the tournament committee, whether they were in the club or at work. And in those days, I worked full-time. So my office in Sight and Sound College became a side office for Sunday's Well Tennis Club for quite a few years. The tournaments were as popular then as they are now, and we welcomed players from all over Munster and from all over Ireland. In Open Week, we always invited the ranked players in the country, most of whom were on scholarships in the States, but they would be home in time for the Open tournaments in Ireland. And we saw some magnificent tennis down through those years from those players. One small little problem was the footwear. Those players would not play on AstroTurf courts in ordinary tennis shoes because of the sand and because they were afraid of slipping. So they wanted to wear AstroTurf shoes, which had just been developed for hockey pitches. The problem with the AstroTurf shoes is they were black. And there was a lot of debate in the club at tennis committee level, general committee level, and tournament committee level about allowing the players to wear the black shoes. However, in the end, sense prevailed because we did want those players playing in our tournament. Now, of course, you can get tennis shoes in all different colours and all different soles, and we don't have to wear just white anymore. The colour of the clothes was another matter. We still wore white when I became captain and for quite a few years afterwards. However, coloured clothes were coming in, and it became harder and harder to buy nice white tennis gear. And a lot of visiting players wore different colours. The late, great Decky Healy had a great way of dealing with it. If a person was out in the court in coloured clothing and they lost, he would say, hard luck to them and we'll see you next year. If, however, they won, he would make sure that the next match they played, they wore white clothing. Now, of course, we have clothing of all colours, and while a lot of people still wear white, I think tennis gear has moved on hugely, and I think the colour has actually enhanced tennis for all of us. The club has continued to be a great club in all the years that I've been a member. It's been a kind of home from home for lots of us who play on a regular basis. We've made terrific friends here. I'm playing with people that I've played with for nearly 30 years. The same people. And I think that's a great tribute to the club and to our friendship. I suppose, like any club, any sport, you will make friends, but tennis is a sport that you can play well into old age. And there's more and more people playing tennis into their 80s and even 90s. In fact, the wonderful Mary Wilson played tennis well into old age, and we won't mention the age that she stopped playing at. But that makes it a sport for life. And it's lovely to see more and more people taking up tennis, witnessed by the fact that people can't get into tournaments. There's more people playing tennis than we can accommodate. When I joined here, there was a waiting list, and I had to wait to get in. In fact, my sister was a member at the time, and we played one open week together where we were in the ladies' doubles final. And the barbecue was on the night of the finals in those days. And we came down together to the barbecue. However, because I wasn't a member, I wasn't allowed in. It was for members only because it was full. And they would only allow members into the clubhouse because of numbers. So I had to go home with my tail between my legs. However, it didn't put me off joining the club. In leaner times, of course, we have had a lack of membership when obviously people couldn't afford to play tennis, and some of our members, unfortunately, had to give up their membership. However, it's very gratifying to see that once again we have a waiting list in the club, and we have people very keen to join. The one tournament that was terrific when I played was the Interfirm. Now, we haven't played the Interfirm in Cork for I don't know how long. Rushbrook always ran a terrific Interfirm, and when I became captain, I was persuaded to run an Interfirm here, which we ran for a few years, but then it sort of fizzled out. And I think today an Interfirm tournament would actually go down very well. And it's something that committees of the future might think about. It made for a lot of good tennis, meeting people from other clubs, and great fun. Speaking of other clubs, we also had every club in Cork on a visit when, back in the 80s and 90s, we invited all the clubs for a friendly, and we had great sing-songs. Again, the great Decky Healy was the leader of the sing-songs, and they were great nights, and maybe something that we should think of doing again, and inviting people to come and join us in our lovely club for friendly matches. One of the things that I'm very proud of in the club is the development of the club. I was chairman of the committee that put up the River Room. We call it the River Room. It's a beautiful addition to the club. And we had a small but very vibrant committee who ran that project. I think it has added hugely to the club, and I think perhaps the time has come when that and the reading room, as we call it, could be upgraded yet again, maybe to have more of a link between the two, which would add to functions and to any prize givings that we have in the club, where often people can't fit into one room. I would particularly like to mention Billy Murphy, who was on that committee with me and who was really fantastic. His support for me and his ideas for that extension really were second to none. And I know we don't see him up here very often, but I would just like to say that he was fantastic. So thank you very much, Billy.